want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Casey Radunz. We've known each other since the early 90s. And we crossed paths 3 years ago. He had just come through an unbelievable health incident. And it was such an amazing story. We talked about doing this. Here we are 3 years later, and the miracle is holding. And the story has grown. And so I'm just going to turn this man loose. His name is Casey Radunz. He's been a resident of Guillian-Barre since a teenager.
Yeah, I believe I would, yeah.
Yeah. And we've known each other since the early 90s. He's in the logistics business, a truck driver and other things like that for supporting himself. But with this physical attack he came under, which was unbelievable in itself, here comes the story of God's restoration process that included economics as well. So Casey, tell us about it. What happened?
I want to say, you know, I may say some things that are a little bit more like the Hebrew. I may use the name Yeshua instead of Jesus. And I don't want anybody to be offended by that. Just that they know that if I say Yeshua or if I say the Messiah, I'm talking about the same Messiah that you believe in.
Yes. Jesus is the English translation of the Greek word Jesus, which is Greek for Jesus. And Joshua is the English translation for the Hebrew word Yeshua, which is Hebrew for Jesus, which was his original language.
Right.
So take off. Don't be hindered by
So, right. So the story starts that it was in April of 21. I was working on my Kenworth, and I was at the back of the transmission. I was doing what some mechanics had recommended that I do, and I've been doing this for many years, that I work on my own truck. God has blessed me that I am very blessed with my hands, that I can do things. And, you know, Scripture says he blesses the work of our hands. Well, he has blessed the work of my hands.
Right.
During the course of this, something wasn't exactly right. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was working with a torch, and a ball of fire came out the back of the transmission and burned me. The fire and some oil hit me. And
so you're working on your truck with a torch, a blowtorch.
A cutting torch.
Cutting torch. Explosion occurred. Okay.
Yes, it was a flash fire. Okay. All the oil, all the fire went on me. The truck was not damaged. Okay. And a friend of mine was there, a mechanic friend of mine was there. I immediately exclaimed, I'm on fire. My glasses and safety glasses I had, everything was on fire, so I just threw them. And I was trying to get out from underneath the truck, and it was yellow flames was coming up off my chest. I could not see anything, could not see where I was going, but I knew I had to get out from under the truck. So I'm on a creeper, and I start rolling. I get stuck underneath the step of the truck on the driver's side, which I was trying to hit an opening that's about 18 inches wide.
Creeper is a platform with wheels on it that a mechanic lays on when he's under a vehicle. So he rolled out from under the truck.
Was attempting to, and I got caught underneath of the step. I was lengthwise to the truck, and the step came over my chest and got stuck in the middle. I'm laying there, I have my eyes closed, and I'm thinking, Lord, I can't just lay here like this. I'm on fire. And so I put my hand on the step, and I pushed as hard as I can, and because it hurt when it came over, and then it hurt more when it come off the other side. So I got up, was looking for a rag, was put the fire out. I was wearing a leather welder's apron. I had welder's gloves on. Mechanic friend of mine explained to me, he says, your gloves are on fire. I kept using the gloves trying to put the fire out, but the gloves were on fire. There's so much fire, I can't see. And I kept my eyes closed.
Did you find a rag that was soaked in oil?
I was trying to find a rag. No, the rag wasn't soaked in oil, but I couldn't find it because I couldn't see.
Yeah.
I went in the direction of the rag was close to. By that time, he got to me. And he kept telling me, quit touching yourself with your gloves. They're on fire. But he wasn't doing anything. He was in awe. He was a little rattled. Yeah. And by the Spirit of God, I was not moved or shaken by what was happening.
Okay.
Absolutely the truth.
You were able to stay calm.
I knew who I was in my God.
Yes.
And I knew that he would come through no matter what.
Okay, so then
I trusted in him.
So did somebody grab a fire extinguisher?
So I was putting the fire out as best I could with the gloves, and it kept reigniting because it's oil that's on fire. So my gloves were burning out, and I kept putting them on my face and touching my chest because the flames would reignite. Finally, my face was no longer on fire, and the flames were not bad.
You're standing up at this time?
I'm standing up.
Okay.
And he grabs the rag that I was looking for, but I couldn't see to get it. He takes it and puts it in his hands. He wraps around my face. He cups my ears with the rag, and I just stood there and let him do it.
Your coworker came into action.
Right. Then he finally took action. And when he pulled the rag away, he says, I'm sorry. He says, but you actually got the fire out everywhere but your ears. He said, your ears on top of your head were still on fire. Well, I couldn't see this. I didn't feel it.
Yes, okay.
So literally my ears and my head was on fire. The flames were still there, and he put them out. Thank God, because if I had been by myself, I wouldn't have known to put that part of the fire out. Trusting in God, I'm like, okay, fire's out. I don't feel a lot of pain. It feels like a sunburn, like a bad sunburn. I didn't go to the hospital right away.
Tough guy.
This is a Saturday afternoon. This is the truth. It's a Saturday afternoon, approximately maybe, I don't know for sure what time, but
is
about
this
2
in
o'clock.
Guillian-Barre, Texas?
Yes, at my home.
Okay.
The truck is in my barn.
Okay.
At home, with a barn with a concrete floor. I use it like a shop, but it's a old hay barn. Okay. And so I was refusing to go to the hospital. I said, I don't think it's that bad. I'm going to trust in God. And so we'll skip to the next morning. I wake up.
Sunday morning.
About 5 o'clock in the morning, because I had gone in, laid down on the couch, and I said, Lord, I trust in you. I feel that maybe my throat is burned slightly, but I'm going to trust you. I'm not going to the hospital. I felt perfect peace.
Okay.
I fell asleep.
Okay.
Woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, still laying on my back in the same position I was in on the couch.
Okay.
And as I got up to go to the bathroom, and I realized my left eye wasn't opening. I looked in the mirror with what I could see out of my right eye, and my whole face was swollen. My left eye was completely swollen shut, and I saw that my right eye was barely opening. Could barely see through a slot. Could see good enough in the mirror to tell I was in trouble. So I sat back down on the couch. I said, Lord, what do I do? And I just felt at peace about, okay, call the hospital. I called down the hospital, and one of the nurses there answers the phone, she's an admitting nurse. She answered the phone. I asked her the question, how serious could this be? She goes, very serious. When did it happen? She says, your throat could be burned. It could swell shut. I said, okay. I said, 2 o'clock yesterday. And she thought it was 2 o'clock in the morning that I got burnt. She said, why did you wait 3 hours? I said, I didn't wait 3 hours. I waited since yesterday afternoon. She about went ballistic.
Yes, okay.
Why did you wait
This is
so
at the
long?
Guillian-Barre Hospital.
Guillian-Barre
ER.
Hospital.
Okay.
At the ER. Why did you wait so long? Why did you wait so long? I'm going to say this, and it's absolutely the truth, and it requires a life that you live according to God's word, that you trust him, and you know his love for you, that all fear is gone.
Yeah.
I had no fear whatsoever. I wasn't afraid of anything through any of this. This started an 11-month-long ordeal.
So you didn't wait 3 hours, you waited 15.
I waited 15 before I even called the
16
hospital.
16 hours by this time, so okay. So,
before I even called the hospital.
Yes.
She said to me, she said, I'm going to send you an ambulance. I said, no, I'm not doing that, no. She goes, why? I said, I don't need an ambulance. I said, I can walk. I said, I have one good eye, I can see.
Okay.
I'm stubborn that way.
Okay.
So she said, give me your address. And she said, if you're not here when I get off work at 6, she says, I am coming to pick you up. You are coming to the hospital. She said, your face is swollen up. You said one eye swelled shut. I said, yeah, okay. I'm going to concede that this is serious enough. I need to come to the hospital.
Okay.
Because I'm kind of, like a lot of men, I'm kind of ornery that way. Very independent.
Yeah.
And so
Sound like you called the right person.
I loaded up my little dog in my SUV because I figured that I'm going to be gone for a while. I can't just leave him, and we'll have to figure somebody will have to take care of him. At least he won't be locked in the house.
Okay.
Went to the hospital. I walked through the door, and I was barely getting through the door of the ER.
Were you taken by ambulance?
No, I drove myself.
You drove. Okay. All right.
I drove myself in the little
So
Trailblazer.
what time did you get there?
About 5:30, maybe 15 till 6, somewhere around there.
Oh, so you woke up at 5.
I woke up at 5.
And in 45 minutes, you were at the hospital.
45 minutes later, I have driven myself to the hospital with one eye.
All right.
And by the time I got to the hospital, I realized if I had waited much longer, I would have been sitting on the side of the road, not able to drive because my right eye continued to swell shut.
Yes, okay.
When I was in the ER, it was very difficult to look at anybody. And to make a long story short about the time in the ER, because this is not, those details are not pertinent.
Folks, don't fast forward to the end. The story gets worse.
It does. So they called a medevac helicopter to come get me.
Okay.
And they wanted to send me to Parkland Hospital in Dallas. Parkland didn't respond. Yes. Yeah. They didn't respond saying we have a bed.
Okay.
They were putting us off. So they called Plano. Plano said yes, send him. And Plano, the doctor told me, he says, I spoke with the doctor there. He says, and I agree. He says, you will be medevaced. Okay. So at that point, I decided not to argue with them. There's no let happen.
So you rode a chopper to Plano.
So they, and the worst part about it was I couldn't enjoy the ride. I just felt the ride.
Flying over all that beautiful
My only helicopter ride, and I was aware of it, but I could not observe anything outside because my eyes, my right eye was, if I worked hard at it, I could get a glimpse.
Okay. So they got you to Plano.
So I got to Plano. In the ER, the ER doctor, not the burn doctor, he was the first one trying. He was going, well, open your eyes. Let me see your eyes. I'm like, unless you know how to open them. I said, they're swelled shut. And so he wanted to intubate me. And fortunately, praise God, the burn doctor, and he was asking me questions. I told him, he says, well, you're burnt yesterday at 2 o'clock. Yes. And of course, all of them were wanting to know, why did you not go to the hospital immediately? Because I trust in my God.
Yeah.
They thought I was cuckoo, but I don't care. You can think I'm cuckoo, but I'm going to say something. I may say this again. Yeah. Someone said this to me, and I've done my best to remember it because it's how I feel. It's accurate. All right? In an argument, the man with an experience is not at the mercy of a man who has an opinion or a theory. Yeah.
So some may have an opinion he was in shock, did not realize he was in as bad a shape as he was. So we'll leave it at that. You can disagree at that point. The point is the man was in bad shape the next day. It became obvious.
Right. And so they did not intubate me. They didn't try to force my eyes open. My face was...
Intubate was put a tube down your throat?
Put a tube so that I could breathe through it.
That was burned. That wouldn't have worked.
My throat was, they were concerned that it would swell shut. But the burn doctor said, if it hasn't swelled shut by now, we're just going to observe him. We're not going to put a tube in.
Okay.
And they were asking me questions about, does my voice sound different? I said, well, it's a little bit raspy. Yeah. I realized that. And they said, okay. So they put me in a room overnight. The swelling went down. The side of my face in front of my ears, they told me that it was swelled out maybe almost an inch in front of my ears. Okay. I had a beard, not as long as it is now, but I had a beard and it was all singed. Part of it was black, but a lot of it was still there.
There was some definite second-degree burns.
Second and third-degree burns.
Oh, okay.
Over 10.5 to 11% of my body was second and third-degree burn.
Okay.
I was burned across my chest. Where on Monday morning, they took me into the ER to clean me up. Praise God, they do it that way now. They actually put you under to do the scrubbing, and they don't come back and scrub you a bunch of times like they used to. They've realized that actually causes more damage than good.
Yeah, that was brutal.
So I didn't go through that.
Yeah.
Thank God. I had made the comment. I said, so the pain begins. They said, no. They said, we don't do that. And I said, oh, praise God for that. Okay. Praise God for the little miracles. Okay, to me was a little miracle that I didn't have to go through all that. So, but they put cadaver skin on me across my chest, up my neck, and on my left shoulder. I was burnt worse on the left side.
Grafts. Okay.
No, these were just stapled on to the skin.
Okay.
They did this in the ER.
Okay.
I was told later it was a preparation to skin graft.
Okay. Okay.
So a week later, now I'm in the hospital. I'm still ambulatory. The swelling went down rapidly. I was able to see again. And the whole time when I'd go to the bathroom, I'd push the button, get the nurse, while I couldn't see, I'd get the nurse to take me to the toilet so I could stand in front. I didn't want to have a catheter for no reason.
Yeah.
And so I made it through all those difficulties of
without a catheter.
Yeah, without a catheter,
and
any of the other things that I've felt would be discomfort.
Yeah.
And they were very gracious. This little nurse was a very sweet little girl. As soon as the swelling was down, and I could, yes.
A woman.
Well, I call her a little girl because I was in my late 50s.
Yes. Okay.
She was very young.
Okay.
But so when the swelling went down, I could see they transferred me to another room, and I had a different nurse from then on. I was in their burn unit for 9 days. So this is Sunday I arrived there. Monday, I'm including Sunday through Monday. That would be 9 days or 8 days.
It was 9 days from the incident.
From the burn.
From
9
Saturday
days from the burn
to Sunday, you're there, and then you're there the following Monday. So you're there for 8 days, but 9 days.
9 days since I was burnt.
Okay.
So Monday morning was when they told me, we're going to take you in and skin graft you. And that was the first time anybody had said anything about skin grafting. And in here, everything inside me said, don't do it.
Okay. Were they going to take skin from other parts of your body?
They said they take over my thighs or my back.
Yeah. So they take a patch of skin off of you, and then they corrugate it. I call it corrugating, but they cover more territory than what they remove. But it's painful. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was telling the nurse, the attending nurse, I said, I need to speak to the doctor. And she says, you can't speak to the doctor. He's scrubbing up for your surgery. I said, that's a waste of time. I'm telling you, I'm not going to do the skin graft. And so they took me down to the ER, the room they take you to before they go into the, it's a
so
prep
you
room.
Just didn't want to do it out of stubbornness, or you had a knowing not to do it?
I had a knowing in here that I didn't need it.
He knew he didn't need to do it.
I knew that I knew that I knew.
Yeah, and sometimes the medical establishment is very thorough.
And they're just going to do what they think they have to do.
Okay, go ahead.
And sometimes it's not always necessary.
So did he?
And these people don't believe in God.
So did you get to talk to him?
I had told them, I said, I serve a living God. My God is going to heal me. I don't need skin grafting. Yeah. Okay. Of course, they thought I was nuts.
Okay.
So I told them, when they get me down there, there's this nurse practitioner, because it's a team of a doctor, nurse practitioner, or two doctors and a nurse practitioner, a team that deals with your burns.
Yes.
Okay. And the nurse practitioner was there, and I told her, I said, I'm not doing this. She said, I kept insisting, you're going to go get the doctor. She said, no, you can't do that. You're going to go get the doctor, because I'm telling him we're not doing skin graft. She finally goes and gets him. He's not happy. He's perturbed with me. He comes in, says, you've got to have a skin graft. I said, no, I don't. I said, what makes you think? Well, we can tell by looking. I'm not going by sight. I said, I'm not going to be skin grafted. I don't need this. Yeah. We had a little bit more conversation, but we'll cut to the end of that.
Okay.
They let me go to my room.
Okay.
And I insisted, the doctor was unhappy with me. Didn't want to admit it, but I felt that he was very unhappy with me. And so I insisted, I'm going home. I'm tired of this. They're saying, you can't do this. You can't do this. You're going to get infected. You have an 80% chance. I said, no. I'm going home.
Okay.
Do you have a pet? Yes, I have a dog. You can't do this. You've had a dog in the house. You can't go home. I'm going home. Okay. I trust in my God. I trust that he will take care of me, and I don't need to be in the hospital.
Yeah, just pause button for the animal lovers. The last mention of the dog was in your SUV. When
That's
you
true.
went to the ER. So what happened with the dog? not to belabor the point, but
Actually, I'm not supposed to tell that part because I don't want to get the person in trouble.
No, not the person's name. A person came and got the dog.
A person came and took care of my dog.
Okay, that's all we need to know.
And the person told me I'm technically not allowed to do this.
Okay, so we will move on with the story. The
dog was well taken care of here at home.
SUV.
Did not have to go to the shelter. No one was going to adopt my dog and I lose my dog.
When did this incident happen?
This was April of 21.
April of 2021.
I don't remember the exact date, but it was late in April.
So a couple months from now, it will be 4 years. All right, go ahead.
That I got burned.
Yes. Okay.
So they had to remove all the cadaver skin, which I have a hairy chest. Yeah. And the hair of my chest came through the little perforated holes that they put in the cadaver skin. And my hair is sticking out when she's removing it. This nurse is removing it. It's pulling on all my hairs. And I'm like, if the hairs came through on their own, because they didn't thread all them hairs through those holes while they put it on me. You got to be kidding. But the hairs are sticking. I'm like, there's healthy skin here.
There's life underneath that.
There's plenty of life here.
Okay.
And I'm like, no. And like I said, there's cadaver skin up my neck, on my shoulder, and across my chest. By the way, see, I have no scars.
Look at this, folks. Show it to the camera.
I have no scarring. This part of my chest literally had turned black from the fire. A patch on my shoulder and up this side of my neck. The left was worse. The side of my face, my ears were. I have a picture. Possibly we might. I don't know.
Splice it in. Send it to me. So, question. The day you turned down the surgery, they took the cadaver skin off that same day?
Yes.
Okay.
They had to remove the staples. They did this back in the room.
Okay.
They didn't do this in surgery. I just had to grit and bear the...
So did it come off like a scab?
Yes.
Painful. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And she got it halfway off, and that's when she told me, she said, just grit your teeth. She says, I think I can remove the rest of it. And she just pulled it the rest of the way. And actually that was merciful.
Yes.
Because the way she was having to fight it, up until that point, it was better to get it off quickly.
So they took the cadaver skin off.
And we put some ointment and stuff on me, and I was insisting I want to go home. They literally sent me home in a Uber.
They discharged you.
I insisted. They can't keep you when you insist.
An Uber from Plano. How much did that cost?
I don't know.
Plano to Granbury.
I didn't pay the bill.
Praise the Lord. Okay.
I didn't. The bill was not on me. That all got taken care of through my accidental insurance.
That's good.
And so I went home. I went and picked up my little dog that night.
Okay. From Uber to Plano is like
100 miles.
100 miles at least. Anyway, go ahead.
And I went and picked up my little dog that evening. I wanted my dog. I missed my dog. I'm very much attached to my animal. Okay. Not that this is important, but one reason I'm attached to my animal is because I'm single. I've never been married, so my animal is very much my closest family member.
Yeah.
He keeps me company.
What's your dog's name?
That's Hot Shot.
Hot Shot.
He keeps me company.
So he's reunited with Hot Shot back in your house. Okay.
And they told me you had an 80% chance that you're going to get infected. You'll be right back here in the hospital. We've got to clear up the infection. We're going to have to skin graft you, and all this is going to start all over again. I said, nope. I serve a living God.
Okay.
I'll be fine. I have peace in here. I know I don't need skin grafted. I'm fine.
You had enough.
So I went home, and I had an appointment to return to the hospital to the clinic so they could check.
In Plano?
In Plano.
Okay.
1 week later.
Okay.
And so I got a pastor friend here in Granbury. It wasn't you, but pastor friend here in Granbury took me up there.
Yes.
Because I was still from what I had been through. I felt like I was a little bit like I would maybe get groggy.
Yeah.
And I said I'm taking too many naps. I don't want to take a chance on. I'm going to be too tired to drive up and back.
Right. Okay.
And he said, okay, and I understand. He's I'm going to go ahead and take you. So he took me up there. The nurse practitioner, when she came into the room, and I'm sitting there without my shirt on, of course, and this other nurse was
the ones that saw you in the hospital.
The nurse practitioner who saw me in the hospital.
Okay, she came in and looked at your
chest. She
chest.
comes in. There's another nurse that took my vitals, and she's still in the room. And she comes in. When she gets around in front of me, I went like this. I looked at her and I said, look, I said, I told you I serve a living God and I don't need skin grafted. Look, her eyes got big and she bent down. She came close and she looked at my chest and she looked me in the eye and she says, you're right. You didn't need skin grafted.
So in your days at home, were you able to bathe in any kind of way?
I actually bathed more than the instructions. I didn't realize it till later. I wasn't supposed to shower every day, but I was showering every day.
Okay, all right. Warm water. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, not hot water, because
yeah, of course.
So it was just warm. I was
probably
taking
still
warm
take
shower.
warm shower. Yeah. All right, go ahead.
I was showering twice as much as I was supposed to.
Okay.
But it was great.
Okay.
So they made sure I had ointments and stuff that I needed. My ear on this side had a spot, and you can't see it unless I point it out to you.
Yeah.
There's a tiny little bump on my ear there.
Okay.
That's all that's left of an area that scarred slightly, because as big as, maybe bigger than my thumbnail, my little finger, was no skin at all. It was white. That was a cartilage showing. I had to use an ointment on it.
Okay.
A special ointment to put on. I had to keep it on it 24/7, and it closed up, and miraculously it's not gnarly scarred. I mean, people don't know unless I show it to them.
It looks good. It doesn't look like a cauliflower.
You know, my nose was black.
Yeah.
You'd think I would, and my cheeks, you'd think I would have some gnarly scarring, because it was 2nd and 3rd degree burns. This was serious.
Yes.
And I was trusting in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob the whole time, because I knew who I was in him. Yes. And I just tell him, Father, I trust you.
Yes. Okay. And you're bathing, you're doing your part. And you
so,
go to the clinic.
I go to the clinic, and everything was great at the clinic. They said, come back next week.
End of story, right? Uh-oh. Oh, keep going.
Come back next week. I come back next week. Same thing. Did the little checkup. They looked at me. Come back next week. The 3rd time I went back, they signed off. Said, you don't need to come back. You're fine.
Same person's driving you each time?
No, I drove myself the second 2 times.
Okay.
I only got him to drive me the first time.
Okay, gotcha.
Because I was feeling better and not taking as many naps.
Okay.
I felt plenty awake. I had injured my shoulder, like I said, pushing myself to get out from underneath the step of the truck.
Yeah.
I had told them in the hospital, I've pulled a muscle here, and they said, we're dealing with your skin. You got to deal with that after we discharge you. And I said, I have a sinus infection. I can feel it. And in my lungs, they said, again, we're taking care of your skin. You deal with that after you're discharged.
That's it.
I've got smoke inhalation. Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
But we're not dealing with that here. I thought, well, that's mighty strange. A hospital would not deal with the smoke inhalation. Wouldn't give me medication for it. Nothing.
They prioritized.
They gave me nothing to help clear that up.
Okay.
And so, of course, immediately after this discharge, I'm trying to find a doctor, and we won't go into all that detail, but it was very difficult to find anyone that would even deal with it.
Okay. The lung issue.
With anything.
Okay. All right.
I never experienced it being so hard to find a doctor that would take care of you. There's all this red tape.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we live in a retirement community. 30% of our population is over 65. Maybe they're overbooked and we need some more doctors. Who knows?
Maybe.
Anyway,
there was too much red tape, too much problem getting. But anyway, so I was telling these doctors, I have smoke inhalation and I've got my shoulder. Well, they took care of the shoulder, got me in physical therapy. They were telling me, well, it's been too long since you had the burn. Smoke inhalation would be, I'm like, it's only been a couple of weeks. They said smoke inhalation would be cleared up by now. I'm like, no, it's not. Oh, Mucinex, take care of it.
Okay, over the counter. Over the counter. All right.
Over the counter.
Okay.
I told them, I said, I've already tried Mucinex, it's not doing a thing.
So is this like at a clinic?
Mm-hmm.
They're telling you this? Okay.
General practitioner.
Okay, at the place. Okay.
Yeah. So we were doing physical therapy for my shoulder, went to the doctor, had to have specialists for that, went to the doctor for that. I'm doing the physical therapy. I'm riding bicycle to try to get my strength back after having been in the hospital for the 8 days and the 9th day before that of doing nothing.
Yeah, not being mobile will make you weak.
Yes, and I'm like, I'm not going to let my body go down because of that. I'm getting my strength back.
Okay.
And I gained a little bit of fat, which I've gained some back now, but I was riding bicycle on the trails here in Granbury, up in town.
Yes.
And I had gotten myself up to where I was doing up to 12 and 13 miles a day.
We have a great bicycle
Yes,
trail
we do. It's
through the town.
and I was using it.
Okay.
I was also going to the YMCA. I'd gotten a membership at the YMCA, so when it was cold, I could ride bike there.
Okay.
And I was giving their bicycle a workout. And so I was doing everything I could to reduce fat, get muscle tone, because I'm used to being strong and healthy and active. And I said, I'm not letting this take me down because I sat on my backside.
All right. So you're pushing yourself.
I trust in my God, but I also know that we have to do our part.
Yes. Faith without works is dead. Yeah. So your shoulder's getting better?
Shoulder's getting better. We're getting down where they're saying, okay, a few more therapies and we're going to be done. We're going to sign you off so you can go back to work. Okay. Because as being a professional truck driver, I'm not allowed to work while under doctor's care.
Yes.
So
your lungs,
now,
are they clearing up?
While riding bike, and when I take a deep breath, I can still feel it.
Feel something
in the depth of my lungs. And I could not convince those doctors.
Yeah.
I've got to have something to clear this up. And I get these little sinus headaches that were just a nuisance like headache, which I'm not used to. I knew something was wrong in there.
Okay.
And I mean, Mucinex wasn't touching it. I didn't know what else to try because the doctors said Mucinex. I asked about other signs. They said, no, don't do that.
Okay.
Okay, so I didn't do it. And then Mucinex wasn't working. So I said, okay, Lord, I got to trust in you. So in the first week of September, all of a sudden started feeling weak. It was a Monday. I remember it was a Monday. I began to feel weak.
So the injury was in April.
Now I'm up to September.
You're starting weakness. Strength was coming back, and now.
And then all of a sudden, I'm feeling weak.
Okay.
And I didn't feel strong enough to get out and ride the bike that day.
All right.
And
so
I had been riding.
This is a second issue coming up.
Yes.
Okay.
More serious than the first.
Yeah.
Stemmed out of the burn.
Okay.
So I'm feeling weak, and before this in the hospital, I had felt this tingling in my hands and in my feet. And they had asked me about it, or asked me, did I feel it? And I said, well, not really, because it was very mild when they asked me. Later on, I began to ask people, what does this mean? They asked me at the burn center, did I feel tingling in my hands and feet? And I said, it's worse now. I said, what does this mean? Why did they ask that question? The doctor said, we don't know why they even asked you that. Seriously, I'm telling the truth. The nurse, these general practitioners had no idea why at the burn center they asked me about tingling in my hands or feet, in my extremities.
All right. Okay.
That's key.
Okay.
It was a key thing that pointed to an issue.
Okay. They were being thorough.
And
yeah.
So Monday I started feeling this way. Wednesday morning I called the same young pastor friend that took me to Plano for the first visit going back. I said, I need you to come get me and take me to hospital. Something's wrong. I'm weak again.
Can you tell me the pastor friend's name?
Yes, it was Daniel Kraft.
He's pastor of a church here in Granbury, a great church called Heights Church of Granbury, which is a campus of the Heights Church in Cleburne. Little plug there for you guys. Love y'all.
That's right. And I have known Daniel since he was, I may be wrong, but I think he was 7 years old. When his father came to pastor the church back then.
Yes. So
I've known him all this time.
PK, yeah.
And I was close to the family, close to the pastor.
Yes.
So
he
came and got me. And we were and I told him, I said,
he got you from your house?
From my house.
From your house to go
to the hospital.
Because this weakness was setting in.
Right. And I didn't know which hospital I should go to.
Oh, Plano again, or?
I wasn't sure.
Yeah, okay.
And so I was asking the Lord about it, and I told him, I said, well, let's head towards Granbury. And I said, I'm going to pray about it. And we got almost there, and I said, let's pull over. I want to pray, because I said, I don't have total peace about Granbury. I said, I'm not going to Granbury till I have total peace. We prayed about it, and I told him, I said, I have peace about it. Really isn't going to matter what hospital I need to go to. I just need to go to hospital.
There's tremendous value in waiting on the Lord and at least honoring Him by
Yes.
allowing Him to guide us.
I agree.
Go ahead.
I had peace. I said, let's go to Guillian-Barre. We're right here. Took me to Guillian-Barre, and as I was walking in, I felt very weak. And I walked up to the desk and I told the nurse, I'm feeling weak. Okay, I'm a burn victim. I explained all this. And she says, okay, sit down. And I had been leaning on the counter. And when I went to straighten back up after leaning on the counter, I told her, I said, I've been standing here too long talking to you.
You're at the admitting desk?
At the admitting desk.
Leaning.
I leaned on the desk, put my hands down.
Okay.
On my hands.
Okay.
It was low enough that I put my
Okay.
hands down. I was
Okay.
palming my hands on it, talking with her. And I told her, I said, I've been standing here long enough. I said, I have lost strength standing here talking to you.
Wow.
And she said, well, go ahead and sit down. I said, you need to get a wheelchair. I said, I'm telling you, I don't believe I can make it to the seats. I had to tell her this 3 times before she took me serious. I told her, I said, okay. I said, you're insisting that I have to walk while I'm telling you I'm too weak to walk. I said, if I fall,
Yeah. You're a big guy.
you're going to have to come. Yes.
Yeah.
I was 270 pounds.
Yeah. So you're breathing fine.
I'm breathing okay, but I still feel this in the lower
Okay.
part of my lungs. When I breathe deep, I could feel it down there, and I still had this
Okay.
little nuisance sinus headache.
Okay.
But now it was coupled with my hands and feet are tingly.
How tall are you?
I'm 6'3",
6'3", 270 pounds.
270 pounds.
And you've been riding
And
bicycles
so
for
I was
miles,
trim.
And now, yeah. And
I had
now
trimmed
this
down. I have-
weakness is hitting
I'm
you.
still not obese, but I have more fat than I'd like to have. But as a 61-year-old, it's hard to get rid of it.
He's not obese, folks. All right, go ahead.
So I'm 270 pounds of mostly muscle, bone, whatever. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So they get a wheelchair for you.
They got a wheelchair for me. And they got more serious.
This
Wheeled
is,
me in
this
there.
is the ER in Grand
This is the ER in Guillian-Barre.
Yeah, there's wheelchairs right there.
So she gets me in a wheelchair. They got more serious about getting me in there quicker. And so they checked me out. They sent me into, they did a CAT scan. They were checking to see if I was having a stroke or something like that. Checking to see if I had a heart attack.
Rule that
Because
out.
no one was thinking Guillian-Barre.
Okay.
Okay? And Guillian-Barre,
Remember that word, Guillian-Barre.
yeah, well, it's actually the last name of 2 different doctors from France.
Is it
that had,
spelled?
it's like Gillian, G-I-L, I don't know if it's 2 L's, I-A-N-B-A-R-R-E.
Okay.
Okay?
Guillian-Barre.
They say Guillian-Barre.
Okay.
And I'm not good at speaking
So
French.
they're not checking for that.
They're not
Just
checking for that.
rule
They're
it out,
checking
a
this.
stroke, heart attack.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the doctor, so I can't find anything wrong with you. I'm going to let you go home if you can walk.
Yeah.
I was able to get up at the side of the bed. I put my hands on the bed, and the nurse was not happy with me because I was doing the same thing I was doing at the desk. Palms down on this bed in the ER. And I was feeling myself a little bit as I was uneasy about whether I had the strength. And she said, if you can't straighten up, she says, I'm not going to let you attempt to walk. And I looked at her and I said, give me a second. And she said, no. She says, you can't straighten up right now and walk. She says, you're staying.
Okay.
And it turns out that was the right decision. They admitted me. I remember eating a meal or 2 that evening. I vaguely remember breakfast the next morning. But pain started setting in. And I started drifting off, you might say, where my memory wasn't even, everything was getting cloudy.
Your
My
consciousness
memory
was-
wasn't, yeah.
So it's
and-
like a grogginess. or-
I was getting like groggy, yes.
Okay.
I've never been drunk in my life, but I would guess that's probably what a drunk feels like.
Yeah.
Like they're a little bit
So
disoriented.
could you read?
No,
Could
I wouldn't say I could read.
Okay.
And I don't know how fast it happened because that part of my memory for basically the next almost 3 weeks. From the first part of September until 2 to 3 weeks before I'm starting to come out of this condition. And during the course of being in that condition,
in 2021,
I literally went down by the Guillain-Barre. As Guillain-Barre is a syndrome that's where the immune system produces an antibody that does not know the difference between your nerves, because the protein of nerves, bacteria, and virus.
So Guillain-Barre is like an autoimmune.
It's autoimmune
dysfunction.
Okay. The nerve has a protein that is so similar to the protein of bacteria and virus, that this antibody is going after bacteria or virus, but it attacks the nervous system also because it doesn't know the difference.
So the immune system got overactive, which can happen, related to the fire. Yeah.
I had this infection in my lungs and this infection in my sinuses. Yeah. Now, they had tested me for COVID. This is during the peak of the COVID, that Delta virus, where so many people were dying
2021,
from it. The hospitals were full. Yeah. Rehabilitation centers were full.
2020 was the COVID year, and then 2021 was the Delta COVID, right?
Especially the latter part of 21 was that Delta variant, which was the worst one. Yeah. They tested me, and they said, you don't have the virus. I said, I can tell you that, I don't even have the sniffles. And I never got the sniffles. They tested me a second time and said, oh, now you come up positive for the virus. And I'm like, but I still have no sniffles, no cough, no nothing. They said, yeah, we know. They said, you have no symptoms of the virus at all, but you tested positive.
Yeah, those tests had the glitches.
They wanted to stick to...
So you had a lung sinus infection.
Right. Plus, now they're saying I've got the virus. Okay. But they admitted to me, you have no symptoms whatsoever of the virus. And I'm like, okay, this isn't the virus. This is lung and sinus. And of course, they're going, well, you've got the... Okay. Whatever. Okay. But when there's no symptoms, you can't blame the problem I was having on the virus when I had no symptoms of the virus.
They had to rule it out. So how many days later were you cured of?
So they're running these tests during this process where I'm half in and half out. Okay. And a friend of mine that I've known since way back in the 80s, a lady who lives here in Granbury, she and her husband and her first daughter had moved here and worked out the power plant. Yes. And her first name is Kathy. Kathy had been coming up there. Now, she's a strong believer. And Kathy had medical training.
Do we have permission to give her last name?
I haven't asked her, so no. I'm not going to give her last
name. Kathy, you know who you are. Feel loved. All right, go ahead.
So, Kathy was coming up there. And because they said I tested positive for the virus...
This is still at Granbury Hospital.
It's still at Granbury Hospital.
So Kathy ministers as a chaplain.
Anyone who, she used to. Yeah.
Right. So did she know you were already in there, or she crossed paths? Okay.
Because Daniel told her.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
She was attending the church, so the church members from the church were, a few of them were coming up there to visit. I vaguely remember them even coming.
The Heights Church in Granbury.
Right. Because my brain was cloudy from this antibody thing. It was attacking my body, and so
your memory's not clear, and your weakness is still there, or did it increase?
The weakness increased until I was 100% paralyzed. Now, before I was 100% paralyzed, they finally did the test. They were starting down the battery of tests. And the reason I brought up Kathy is because Kathy has medical training. Yeah. She was training to be a doctor, a psychiatrist, so she did all the medical training. Yeah. And so she was so close to being a full-blown doctor. Right. And former...
I know Kathy. She's gone to school.
Some former friends... Yeah. My former friend told me that she was a doctor, and I didn't know that she didn't finish her internship, but she didn't finish as an intern. Okay. So she never got the full-blown doctorate degree, but she had all the training to get there. So she knew what she was looking at, and she could talk all the terminology with the doctors as if she had a full doctorate. But I didn't know she didn't have her full doctorate, and I had told them she was a doctor, not knowing at the time she wasn't a complete doctor, but
I think she has some master degrees.
Oh yes. Oh yes. She, like I said,
so
she's
I
right
have
there.
to ask this question as a man.
What's that?
You're totally paralyzed, so you get the catheter.
Oh, they put the catheter in
You
almost.
had to have the catheter. All right, go ahead. Move on.
Because that
Move
was
on.
one of the first things I could not control.
Yes. Okay, gotcha.
At first, the nurse asked me, "Can you control your bladder?" I said, "I'm doing fine." Well, I don't know how quick it was, but it had to be. I'm wanting to say within the first 24 to 48 hours, I would try to grab I remember this, I'd try to grab the little urinal and use it, and I couldn't hold it long enough to get the urinal there. And the first time I had that accident, she said, "That's it, you're getting a catheter."
Okay.
So I got a catheter almost immediately.
And then
I'm in the this whole thing in the hospital is 65 days.
Wow. So eventually you're completely paralyzed.
Yes.
So how are you eating?
Before I came completely paralyzed, I remember that Kathy had told them doctors, he has Guillian-Barre. Look at him. He has Guillian-Barre. He has all the symptoms. They told her, they said, no. They said, we're not going to jump to the test for Guillian-Barre. That's the last one. She goes, I'm telling you, test him for Guillian-Barre. Yeah. I had already told them, not knowing I was incorrect, but I had already told them she's a personal friend of mine and she's a doctor. So when she insisted, you're going to test him for Guillian-Barre before all the other ones, they gave in and they tested.
Kathy does not represent herself as a doctor.
No, she does not. That was someone else said that. And I didn't know the difference because she really is
but
schooled.
If you understand what Guillian-Barre is, it made sense.
And she knew.
What happened. So, okay, go ahead.
She remembered her training. And I praise God she did. And I think it's because she is a praying believer that the Holy Spirit was bringing her training back to her memory. I really believe that.
So they did the Guillian-Barre test.
So they did the test. That's a spinal tap, by the way, and it's not fun.
Oh, no wonder they would be hesitant. Yes.
They sent this doctor in there. They told me, they said, he's the best.
Okay.
And he was apologizing to me while he had this needle in my back because he wasn't getting what he needed. And so it probably took 2 to 3 times, maybe 4 times as long, because he's going, I am having trouble.
Ouch. Okay.
And I have to lay very, very still because this is going into this needle is into my spinal cord.
So
I'm in pain already.
Yes. All right.
Okay. Let me tell you something. Absolutely the truth. Having Guillian-Barre is very painful.
So you lose muscular activity.
You lose
but you can
control.
But you can feel.
You can feel everything. And you feel so...
Are you able to...
The nerves are super sensitive.
Are you able to eat?
No. The nerves were super sensitive to where every little thing hurt.
Yeah.
And it was painful. Everything was painful.
So it really
super
hurt.
painful. Every nerve in my body was screaming out in pain.
Yeah. So he succeeded at the test.
We got the test done and came back positive. You have Guillian-Barre. And it was shortly after that is when my brain, my mind got so foggy that I was literally drifting in and out of a coma. And when I had said that to one of the nurses later, she said, yes, you were drifting in and out of a coma. I said, I was pretty sure of that much now that I'm out the other side of it.
So did they intubate you?
They, at first they were just doing treatments for the lungs and sinuses. They had figured out I was having trouble breathing. And Kathy was one of them that at one point, and I think I was already in the intensive care unit, when Kathy told them he has pneumonia. Look at him, he has pneumonia.
Yeah.
And by then, I'm not sure if I was on the ventilator or not, but she told me that some of this is because of what people told me, because So
did they intubate you?
They put a trach in my throat. Oh. They put a feeding tube in my stomach. And they put me on the ventilator, the respirator, whatever. No, I guess it's a ventilator, not the respirator. It breathes for you. Because my nervous system was shutting down literally to the point that the diaphragm was not working at its full capacity. One of the nurses...
Of course pneumonia is going to happen.
One of the nurses was a visiting nurse that they brought in, the traveling nurses.
Okay.
One of them was a lady from from Arizona. I don't remember her name, but I remember her face very clearly. She was a respiratory therapist.
Okay.
And she told me later, she says, I was checking on you every hour. She says, I would find an excuse to come by your room, take a look at you, and go on and do my next duty. She said, I checked on you every hour. They normally show up once, maybe twice during the day.
So they're keeping you alive and dealing with the pneumonia. But what do you do? What do you do for
She was checking
Guillian-Barre?
on me, and she said she noticed I was having trouble breathing. She called the doctor. She got hold of the doctor and said, he's having trouble breathing. Can I intubate him? The doctor said yes. Okay. So she was the one that first put the scope down my throat and put in the tube. Now, she told me later, she says, I had the camera in there to put the tube in, because that one goes through the mouth to start with.
Okay.
She says, and you have scarring in your throat before we ever put it. I said, yes, I know. I was burned. A burn victim. She said, oh, that's right. I saw that in your chart. Everybody was forgetting that I was a burn victim.
Yeah.
When I would remind them of it, they would say, oh, that's right. I saw that on your chart.
So externally, you look fine.
I looked fine.
All right. So what are they doing? What are
if
they
I
doing
had
for
not
the
been telling them I was a burn victim, they didn't know.
Yeah. So they're keeping
the truth.
they're keeping you alive, doing all these life-saving ventures.
Now, yeah.
Well, what about the Guillian-Barre? What do you do for that?
So here's what happened.
Okay.
I remember this part because I really had to get on my faith at that moment. It was a male doctor. If I remember right, I think his first name was Christian.
Okay.
Not doctor, male nurse.
Male nurse, okay.
He came in and he told me, he said, they have ordered this immunosuppressant therapy to battle the Guillain-Barre.
Okay.
They said that's the only treatment we have. It's such a rare thing. Guillain-Barre is so rare that there's not much research done. There's really not a special medication to deal with people that have Guillain-Barre. They've never spent the money to try to. Okay. So they use a drug that is administered by IV that already exists for other purposes of suppressing the immune system.
So that's what they use. So they ordered that.
So they ordered that. He comes back in.
It wasn't in stock at Guillian-Barre
It was not in stock in Guillian-Barre. They had to order it, and they told me that. They said the doctors have prescribed this. It's been ordered. And it was, I don't know how long later. I'm guessing it may have been the next day.
Yeah.
But he comes in there and he tells me, he says, I have bad news. He said, that's what he said. He said, they have refused you the medication.
Well, if you have pneumonia, you don't need
Who's
to take...
the they?
I don't know. But if you have pneumonia...
At this point, then no one had said I had pneumonia yet.
Reduce your immune system.
You got me slightly ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, at this point, they had not diagnosed me with pneumonia yet.
Okay.
And so he says they've refused the medication. Okay. I don't know who the they is. Yeah. But I had to get on my faith. I'm like, okay, Lord, they have a medication to help, but I'm being refused the only treatment. Yeah. And again, I just said to the Lord, I said, I trust you. Yeah. And I had no fear. Okay. That's very key. It's very key that I had no fear, because fear is a killer. Okay? And I had no fear. Okay. I can only give glory to God that I had no fear. Yes. Because in my own natural man, nobody could go through what I went through without some fear trying to come on. Yeah. And fear never came. Yeah. I said, I know my Heavenly Father. So, I know the things He's done to me, done for me physically, which we haven't got time to go into other testimonies from years ago. But He has healed my body a couple times before.
So now you're forced to trust God.
Now I'm forced to trust God because they would not
or the
even.
Insurance or
somebody
county,
refused it.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And so I was refused the medication. And Kathy comes in. Now, how this happened, I'm not sure how exactly, but she was able to see my chart. She would see that my chart was somewhere and no one was looking. She'd look at my chart, which, by the way, I am perfectly okay that Kathy did what she did. She had 100% permission.
No charges are going to be filed, Kathy.
She did nothing wrong.
The HIPAA laws are not going to be
This
activated.
is a very close personal friend.
Yes.
By no means did she do anything wrong that I am concerned
Anyway,
about.
so she looked at your chart.
She saw my chart. She confronted them, the doctor. She said, how come it's on his chart that he's been ordered this medication and he hasn't been given the medication? She said that took them back.
Yeah.
They didn't have an explanation.
Yeah.
But suddenly the medication showed up. Here comes the same male nurse comes in with a smile on his face. He goes, look, he had this taller box and this, I think it was 2 taller boxes and then this shorter one. He said, these are bottles.
Pause right there. When a person's in a hospital for an extended stay, because all the shifts that change during the course of a week, you need an advocate to kind of stand up for you. And Kathy was that advocate.
I would say, yeah, you do. And 90% of people have no one.
So they come in with the boxes.
He comes in with the box. The same male nurse.
Okay.
He comes in with the box and said, look, I got the medication. It's an IV, so we're going to start administering it. So he gave it to me, and that's the last thing I remember happening before I ended up in the ICU. And I didn't even realize I was in the ICU.
Okay.
I went down to 100% paralyzed. And when I say 100%, I mean 100%. I could not move my jaw. I could not move my tongue. The only thing on my entire body that I could control was my eyes. I could open and close my eyelids. I could move my eyes. I could not turn my head. I could not do anything.
So your immune system was in conflict. So shutting it down just...
It was shutting down my body.
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
So by now, I don't even remember them taking me into the ER to put the trach in my throat or to put the tube in my stomach. They had contacted my sister who lives in Tennessee and were getting her permission to do these things. They were talking with her sometimes 2 and 3 times a day on the phone. Okay. And she works in a clinic at a hospital in Nashville where they do testing. It's a clinic where they do the clinical testing for new drugs.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
So she's interacting with all this type of thing in her job.
They're keeping her informed.
And she said,
You're
yes.
in ICU and you are
She
paralyzed.
said, you can put the tubes in him if you need to. And so they put a trach in my throat and they had the feeding tube. And I remember waking up laying there and here's this arm of this thing with this funny looking head on it and a tube. And that's all I could see. My eyes would not focus on anything. Now I wear glasses, but I'm nearsighted. So anything up close without my glasses, I can see it. But even the ceiling, like I can take my glasses off now, and my eyes aren't so bad that I can see the shape of those light fixtures, okay? But in the hospital, the Guillian-Barre had affected my brain to the point that everything was foggy if it wasn't right here.
Okay.
And I could see this thing in this tube, and I didn't realize that I was paralyzed. I thought they had tied me down.
You felt trapped.
Mm-hmm. I literally did.
Okay.
I thought, what have I done that they have tied me down?
Okay.
Because I could not move my arms and legs. I knew I could not move my arms and legs, and I could not figure out why. Now, and my body was hurting everywhere, especially the points of the body that were contacting the bed.
Okay.
Everything hurt. Everything hurt.
So you're sleeping, you're waking up, you're sleeping.
I'm actually drifting off into a coma. And when I would drift into a coma, I didn't realize it to start with, but I was having out-of-body experiences.
Okay.
I thought they were dreams. And Pastor, actually Rabbi friend of mine, Rabbi Baruch Bierman, he's a personal friend of mine.
Okay. So you were telling him about your dreams, and he said, I think this is more than just dreams.
No, I thought it was dreams.
Right. Okay.
And I was experiencing some things, and I thought, these are weird dreams.
Okay.
I was leaving my body, and there was like this pipe. They had these little 3 seats that stuck out on this pipe, and I would go sit down on one of them seats, and I would travel down from the room. And this is an upper floor in the hospital. There's no basement in this hospital, but I was going to a room that I was going downward, going into a room that didn't exist. And the room would be lit up, and to my left, over here when I would arrive there, about a 45-degree angle away, 8 or 10 feet away, is this door opening. There's no doors, just the cased opening of a door. Beyond this doorway, it's black as it can be. The only light shining in there is the light from this room shining through this doorway. Okay. And there's this little fella in there. I'm going to say he had the body the size of maybe a 2 to 3-year-old child. Okay. He was black as he could be. Black, black, black. Everything about him was black. He had no whites to his eyes. He was different shades of black. Maybe a little, some of it shiny, some of it flat. He was black.
He was human.
He looked human.
Okay.
But he's little bitty thing like a child, but he had the voice of a man.
Okay.
And he would beckon to me. He'd say, come with me through this doorway. Come with me through this doorway. And I glanced over at him, and I knew immediately what that was. I knew that was death's door. I knew beyond that door was the valley of the shadow of death that David describes. Right. I knew what it was, and I knew what he was. Yeah. But I thought it was a dream. Yeah. I thought, I'm just going to ignore him. And from this location, I had gone to different places and came back. And I won't tell everywhere that I went because some of it's not so important. But I went to 2 different places that I think is important because of what I saw and what was going on. I had gone to a hotel, and I knew where I was at. I was in Malaysia, and I was in the foyer of a hotel. And I was waiting for Bishop and Rabbi Bierman to arrive. Okay. Bishop is his wife. They're wonderful people. I was waiting for them to show up, but they finally showed up, and we spent a little time in the foyer of this hotel. And I supposedly had a room there, but I never went to the room. After I spoke with them, Bishop, she went to the room, and Rabbi and I were sitting there in the foyer talking, and then he went to the room, and then next thing I know, I'm carried off to the location. And I immediately knew.
In these journeys, you're mobile. You're not paralyzed in the journeys. So,
right.
To me, the bottom line is you're getting relief from being captive in a horrible circumstance.
I was leaving the body.
Anyway, go ahead. You're getting relief. So.
It was instantaneous. I moved from one place to another. Yeah. Instantaneous. And I wasn't thinking about where I was going. This was not something that I was in control of. It was just things were happening. Okay. And I thought it was dream. Okay. I arrived in this little building, and there was this scuffle going on outside. Okay. Turns out it was a battle was going on. Okay. And during the course of this battle, these people were fighting, and one group had taken part of the ground, and the room that I was in, they came and got me from this room, moved me to another room. They said, we don't have control over this part of the building. We have control of this other part of the building. We're taking you to this other part of the building. Okay. Well, they had me in this other part of the building, and this battle is going on. And I said, what's going on? They explained. They said, well, it's a battle. And I said, and I immediately knew this is a spiritual battle. Okay. I said, I want to fight in the battle. They said, you cannot. I said, why? They said, because you're not from here. You have no spiritual authority here. Okay. And I was like, okay, but I want to fight. And so I found my way out of the room. This is a flat roofed building with the wall up there on top. And they're fighting from up there. I made my way up there, and I got shoved down flat on the roof and said, you're not supposed to be up. Well, I'm up here. Okay. What are you going to do about it? They didn't like it. So they said, but you cannot.
Some very interesting experience.
I would raise up, and I would try to get my hand. There were weapons and ammunition around. I tried to get my hand. Nope. Yeah. I'd raise up and try. Nope. You're not allowed to fight. And I said, well, can I pass you ammunition? They said, you can do that. We're not supposed to, but you can do that. So I was passing ammunition. Okay. and I knew what was happening without some things just automatically. I just knew. I was in a middle of a spiritual battle, and this was the armies of God fighting. This is the armies of light fighting against armies of darkness.
Armies of God. Singular.
Armies of God, the army of light, and the
so
and
it's a spiritual.
Satan, the spiritual, and I'm in the middle of this thing, and I'm not. And
so there's symbolism, there's metaphors, there's realities.
In this moment, I mean, I already knew that yes, our spiritual authority is not just everywhere. It really is limited. If you don't live there, you don't have the authority over that location that you have over your home.
Yeah.
This is a reality in the spirit realm.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew this before this, but I was still eager to fight. I wasn't allowed to. So from there, I was carried off again.
So for those of you who say, I'm not sure about that authority in other realm things, use your concordance and look up the word sphere. Paul talks about not boasting or extending himself into someone else's sphere of authority. Right. So we all have authority. Like you can't punish someone else's kids. You have authority over your own. So it's
we are limited concept. As to where that because we're not.
Only God has an unlimited authority. Our authority is limited based on our assignment. So go ahead. You're in the hospital.
So I'm carried off to another location.
Yeah, so you're not suffering.
This second location I'm carried to, I find myself I knew what it was. I was in a vessel suddenly, and without seeing the outside, I knew I was in this large vessel, and it was shaped like a large container. And in the center of it is where they have me, and I knew there was other people in there, but I knew nothing, but didn't meet these other people. But I was put in this room. There was a bed in this room, and amenities, and that's it. I wasn't allowed out of this room. Okay. I had to be kept there.
Okay.
And there was a lady that would attend me. She'd come and bring me my food and stuff.
So
and she wouldn't allow me out of the room.
So this is what is actually happening in the physical, but you're experiencing that.
But I was experiencing in the spiritual. And I knew I was in this vessel.
Yes.
And the vessel was on the Red Sea.
Yeah.
I knew where on the Red Sea. I was on the Jordan side of the Red Sea across from Eilat, Israel.
Yeah.
I've been to Eilat several times.
Yeah.
Because I've been to Israel. Yeah. I knew that's where I was at without even having seen the outside. And this woman was telling me, she said, you and these other three people that are here, you are here to take our place. They said, we have this gold that we stole from Israel, and it's in both ends of this vessel, and you guys are in the middle. We're filling the ends of this vessel with crude oil. We're going to scuttle this thing. It's going to sink, and it's going to drown the four of you, and your bodies will be mistaken to be the terrorist bodies. And I said, no, Lord, this is not what's going to happen. I don't accept this.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, you're not going to get away with this. This isn't going to work.
So this is better than a movie. You're in this thing.
Oh, I'm in this thing. I'm experiencing this thing.
Yeah.
And to me, it was more real than any dream, although I still thought it was a dream.
Yeah.
I didn't understand how real this was, and it was a dream.
Yeah. To me, these experiences, with all the details, have a message in them.
Mm-hmm.
And the other details that surround the message are like a frame around the picture. So the message is you're in a war and you have to just
trust in God.
Let God. Yeah.
I had to trust in God.
Yeah. Trust in
and
God.
So in this situation, I just told the Lord again. I just kept saying, Lord, I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. Okay. You're going to get me out of this. I am not going to be drowned in this vessel with gold that belongs to the nation of Israel. So these terrorists
God
can
in the
steal.
Hospital room, and you're trusting God in the spiritual experience. All right, go ahead.
So suddenly I hear this little skirmish of a battle going on that's inside of this vessel that's like a container. I knew what it was shaped like, although I had never seen the outside of it. And in steps through the doorway an IDF soldier with his M16 or whatever the repeating gun was that he had. And he told me, he says, and I'm there, I'm like this. I said, I'm a hostage. He goes, okay. He says, until we prove that, I can't treat you like a hostage. I still have to take custody of you. And I said, okay, that's fine. I said, but you need to take me to your commander. He said, why? I told him, I said, because these terrorists that brought me here said they stole gold from Israel and it's in the ends of this container. I need to speak to your commander. He goes, how'd you know about that? I said, I just know. And I said, I was told by the terrorists that they were going to drown us in, they were going to scuttle this thing. And I said, you guys need to find the charges, because the charges are supposed to be set. If they go off, they're going to scuttle this thing and you guys are going down with us. So he takes me and takes me up the stairs directly to a commander. And the commander was a woman.
Okay.
And she was a colonel. She introduced, I don't remember her name, but she introduced herself and her name and everything, her rank. And so I told her quickly the story. And I told her, I said, there's charges set. You've got to disarm them. And so these guys were there with them. More of them rushed down in there. They stopped the thing from going off. I told them, I said, you got to pump the crude out. You'll find the stolen gold in both ends. They were planning on sinking this thing with us in it. They were going to come back later, years later, when you weren't be looking for the gold. They were going to pump the crude oil out, and then they'd have their gold to fund what they are wanting to fund. And when I got done with that, suddenly I'm back to this room where I got back on one of them little seats, and I ran up this pole back into my room in the hospital. I thought it was dreams.
People are praying for you. Poor Casey, and you're having adventures.
Okay, this is during this Delta variant of the virus. Yes. So and I'm in the ICU. Yes. Kathy was able to. She told me later. She said, I was able to get in there one time and actually pray for you in the ICU. Yeah. My sister came, and she still tells people this day. She says, I went, my two sisters left their home outside of Nashville Friday evening, came over here to get my dog. And that's what she'll tell people. I went to Granbury, Texas to get his dog because I didn't want anything to happen to his dog, end up in the pound and lose the dog, because she said, I know Casey loves his dog. And when he gets out of the hospital, he's going to want his dog.
So she made a hot shot to get hot shot.
So they run, that's right. They run over here to get hot shot. While they're here, she gets to spend a short time with, she said, I prayed with you. I remember trying to get back to my body because I heard her voice and I could not. I was on one of these spiritual trips.
In a coma, you can hear what's happening outside.
I heard. Yeah. I knew what was happening, but I was trying. So I couldn't get back to my body when I wanted to.
Interesting. Okay.
When I finally got back to my body, because this was a process. Yeah. Like I said, at first I thought it was dreams. I realized I was actually leaving my body. No one's going to tell me any different.
So they came.
The man with an experience is not at the mercy of the man who has a theory.
Yeah. Well, you can't disprove it. So. What's the fruit? That's what I always say. What is the fruit?
So they came over, they got my little dog, and she said on their way back, they were in this hotel room, and there was this thunderstorm, and the lightning actually struck the transformer and knocked out the power.
In the hotel?
In the hotel.
Here in Granbury. Okay.
And it struck the transformer right outside of the hotel where they were at. It was close.
Did they tell you which hotel?
And she told me, I think she said it was the Best Western. Okay. I think that's what she told me. Yeah. She said lightning struck it.
It's a real place.
Knocked the transformer out.
Okay.
She said, so we were in the dark. And she said, my other sister slept right through the whole thing. She did not have a clue. Okay. And she said she knew in her spirit that there's a spiritual battle going on. She said she knew to pray. She said, I got up and I'm pacing the floor in this hotel room in the dark and praying, because she says, this is a spiritual thing trying to take Casey. And she says, I'm standing in the gap. And she prayed for me. Rabbi Bierman was praying for me. Bishop told me later, she said, Casey, she said, we'd be walking somewhere together. And she's out of the clear blue. He would tell her, he'd say to his wife, he'd say, Casey's in the hospital. And she said he'd do this 15, 20 times during the day. She said he just stopped and said, Casey's in the hospital. I'm praying for Casey. I'm not going to lose Casey. Yeah. And I remember when I first got in there, I called him and told him. And he said, get out of there, get out of there. He said, they'll kill you in there. They'll kill you in there. I said, well, I realize they're not going to do the treatment that they should. because they don't know God.
Yeah.
They're so limited. And that's what he kept telling me. So anyway,
even those that know God don't know everything. God knows everything.
Right.
And he allows us to know things partially, because perfection,
the only thing he could think of was
yet come. So,
and that was the main thing he was concerned: get out of that hospital, get out of that hospital. But he didn't understand Guillian-Barre. He didn't understand what Guillian-Barre was doing to me. He didn't know these details, because I didn't even know when I told him that I was there. I mean, I called him immediately after I got there.
Yeah.
I didn't know this was coming.
Yeah. So 65 days.
So my sister prayed, and she was doing spiritual warfare. They got home with my little dog, and she still tells people, I went there to get his dog, because I knew Casey wasn't going anywhere. The doctor told the church family and friends that were coming up there, this one doctor said, say your goodbyes because he's going. Now my sister Pat tells me what he said to her was he has a very slim chance of living. And he also told people, if he lives, what he doesn't know is he'll never drive again.
Oh, man.
That's what he said.
Wow.
That's what people told me. They said, he said you would never drive again. I said, he doesn't know the God that I serve.
Okay.
So after my sister had been there, and then this little nurse, about as pretty as one I remember from the...
A woman.
I say a little nurse. She's a little Hispanic girl, young girl, probably in her 20s. Okay, at this time I'm 57 to 58 years old. So to me, it's a little girl. And she's small. I stand 6'3". Everybody is small compared to me.
Yeah.
So
you're coming towards the end of the 60 days?
No, I'm in the ICU. I remember her coming and touching my arm.
Okay.
And when I came out of the coma several times, they didn't know.
Yeah.
They thought I was in the coma the whole time. They would get all excited when I would open my eyes, and I'd be thinking, I've opened my eyes half a dozen times or more, and you people weren't here. What are you getting excited about? I've been waking up. But I thought I was just dreaming. I didn't realize how bad my body was. I didn't realize what this thing up here on this hose was about. I didn't realize I couldn't move because I was paralyzed. I thought they had me tied down. I thought it was strapped down. Literally. And then she's touching me on my arm, and she's getting close to my face because she saw that I opened my eyes, and all I could do is open, close my eyes, and move my eyes. Couldn't move anything else. And she told me, she says, can you speak? Can you do anything? And I just looked at her, and she goes, okay. She said, blink once for, I think it was one, I may have this backwards, but I think it was once for no and twice for yes, I think.
Yeah.
Can you understand me? I blinked my eyes twice. Okay. So she taught me a little bit. She says, if you don't give up on us, we won't give up on you.
Oh, man.
And that was the first time I realized, what does she mean by that?
Yeah.
Give up what? Why? Why is she saying this to me?
Yeah.
And so she leaves the room. Okay. I don't remember exactly what they had done, but I do remember a couple times when they found me awake, they'd take the tube off and they'd tell me, breathe on your own. You need to exercise your diaphragm on purpose, breathe on your own. They say, stay awake as long as you can. Well, I did this, and I was still, they told me I was only actually on the respirator for about 24 hours, which is amazing.
Okay.
I came off of it that quick. But I had been on it. I was on it because I did not know that I needed to stand in faith for my life.
Yeah.
I was just simply saying, Father, I trust you.
Yeah. Okay, so
I was at total peace. I had no fear.
How long?
I had no anxiety.
How long were you in the ICU?
I'm not sure how long. I don't know. We'd have to go. I do have the medical records. I've never actually tried to find out how long I was up there.
Hospital was over 2 months.
The whole time it was 65 days. I wasn't actually in the upper floor ICU, probably not more than a couple of days, as far as I know. But they have a lower ICU that I spent a lot of time. I was in the lower ICU. They took me to the higher up ICU. Then they downgraded me. So I realized my body's in trouble. And this is where Rabbi Bierman cracks up. He thinks it's so funny when I say that. When I say, I didn't know my body was in trouble, he starts laughing. He goes, you didn't know I did not know my body was in trouble. I did not know that I needed to stand in faith and take authority.
You had brain fog, yeah.
So I realized that my body was in trouble while I was in this room I'm talking about, where I would go down into this lit up room, and there was death's door in the valley of shadow of death. I was in there, and this little guy was in the doorway, and again he said to me, he says, come with me through this doorway. And at that moment I said, I'm taking authority over this. I'm tired of this. I'd just been ignoring him.
Yeah.
I got up and I walked over to him. I stuck my finger in his face and I said, I know what you are and I know who you are. And I said, I'm telling you, I'm tired of trying to ignore you, and I don't want to hear another peep out of you. You shut up. You don't make a sound.
You rebuked him. All right.
I got in his face and I got detailed.
Okay.
That's what I expected from him. And he came to attention and his eyes got big and he just looked at me. He was petrified. Okay. And I went back over and sat down and stayed in that room. And that's when I started saying, Lord, okay, I realize my body's in trouble. Didn't realize it until now. And I said, Lord, I'm not ready to go through that door. Now, I've had pastors, when I've told my testimony, I've had people tell me, well, that's only because it wasn't your time. I beg your pardon. There's nothing in Scripture says that we have an expiration date stamped on us anywhere. God said in Genesis,
it's appointed once to die. It doesn't say when that appointment
that's right.
is.
It's appointed once that man will die.
We can be foolish and speed it up.
That's right. We can.
Otherwise, suicide would be impossible. So go ahead.
Right.
So 65 days.
So I told the Lord, I said, I'm not ready to go. I said, I realize that your scripture says, your word says in Genesis, and man's days will be 120 years upon the earth. And I said, Lord, I haven't even made it to the 60. I was 57 at the time. My 58th birthday was just around the corner. Said, I haven't even made it to 60. I'm not going. And I said, I know we have all of eternity, and what little bit of time I have left on this earth, even if I live to be 120, it's nothing compared to eternity. I'm staying. And the Lord answered me, and he said, okay. He said, you're going to go through some pain during recovery. I said, it can't be anything compared to what you bore on the cross. Yeah. I said, Lord, I'm going to stay because somebody needs to know that you are a true living God. If I can touch one with the testimony of my recovery that is yet to come, I said, I'm staying. The Lord said, okay. And I decided right then and there, no more of this traveling out from this room to these. I said, I am not going anywhere. I'm going right back to my room. I went back to the room. I traveled back up to the room, and I turned, and at that moment, I didn't even realize that what was happening. Suddenly I was in my body, and then I left again. I was back in that room later. I don't know how long, because you don't realize time passing. And I'm back in that room down below again, and I said, no, I am going to go back to my body. I'm staying in my body. Yeah. This is it. I said, Lord, and I sat on one of them pegs on that thing, and I said, I'm not even getting off of this. I'm going back to the room. And I sat there, and I said, I trust you. This is your word on it. And I said, Lord, your word says, and I believe it's Paul that said it, he said, the spirit that raised Christ from the dead now lives and dwells inside of my body, and it makes alive my mortal being. Yes. And I said, I'm standing on that. And you said 120 years. It's in your word, 120 years. I don't believe in this 70 thing. Moses said that concerning the nation of Israel in the desert. He wasn't saying that to curse everyone after that. The 70 is all we were promised, because that's not what the word says. Study it.
Okay, so
I went back up to the room, and this time when I arrived in the room, I realized that this time I was paying more attention. When I arrived back in the room, I looked over at my body. I saw my body in the bed, and I thought, I'm going back to my body and I'm staying. Nothing happened at just that thought. At the moment I began to move in that direction, instantly I was in my body. Okay. It wasn't the thought that put me there. It was the thought that first gave the power to get there. but I still had to make a movement.
Okay.
I moved just barely. I was going to get up,
Yeah.
and I didn't even get up. I was in my body. And that was the last time I left my body. I started coming out of it again. I was awake. They saw me. They took the tube off, told me to exercise. And I did. I fell back to sleep, and I said, Lord, I'm going to trust you. I'm off the machine. I'm going to trust you. Woke up again, and I was still in my body and had no more out-of-body experiences. And they had the thing back on me. I stayed awake. The nurse saw me. They kept coming in. At one point, the trach was bothering me. Something was wrong. And all I could do was look at the nurse. And I kept looking at her, and I'd look down at my chest. I'd look at her and look down at my chest. And she goes, something's wrong. And I blinked my eyes for yes. So she called the therapist, breathing therapy guy, and said, get in here, something's wrong. She says, he's trying to talk me with his eyes. I couldn't move at all, just my eyes. Yeah. They come in there, and he started to inspect. There was something wrong, and he worked on it. And he said, this isn't supposed to be this way. And they got, I don't know what tools they were using, but he clipped something or did something there. Okay. I don't know what happened, but something was wrong. And when he took care of it, this weird feeling I had in my chest started going away. And I was like, okay, there was something wrong there. And I fell back to sleep again and woke up. So at that moment, my body began to recover rapidly. And I could wake up and I'd see the clock on the wall. I'd wake up when the nurses would do their shift change, because they'd all come in and stand at the foot of my bed and talk about me and then leave. And I could see the clock, even though I didn't have my glasses on. I could see the hands on the clock. I knew what shift is coming on, what shift is going off by their conversation.
Starting to track with time now.
So now I'm tracking my time again, and I know when they're coming and going.
Getting traction.
And I'm coming back. And so they would take the little control thing, as push the buttons you push on controls the TV, the call button for the nurse. They'd set the thing on my chest and tell me, if you need anything, push the button. And I could only speak with my eyes. I give them the dirtiest look I could give them, and they couldn't figure it out.
My hands don't work, y'all.
I can't even move, and they're telling me to push a button.
They're taunting you.
And so I'm not going to tell all the details about this, but I'm still going to tell enough that you get the gist. So they're feeding me through this stomach tube. Right. The doctor had come in at one point and told me, she says, we don't know why, but you're getting sick. You could be spitting up. You're throwing up. And I just looked at her. Couldn't do anything but look at her. I'm like, I told y'all I have sensitivities to certain foods, and there's got to be something wrong with what you're feeding me. But this, she already explained, okay, we're feeding you through this tube, blah, blah, blah. Okay, got it. They were feeding me something they shouldn't have been feeding. Most likely pork or beans was in it, and pork and beans will upset my stomach. Yeah. I will get the runs, I will throw up, and I'll do both at the same time. Oh, man. My body says no to these things. Yeah. Don't do it. My body thinks I'm being poisoned. Yeah, sometimes. So I would spit up. Yeah. And I wasn't supposed to be doing this, because they've got this tube down in my lungs. It says, if you aspirate this, we got you up past the pneumonia. Now you're going to get it all over again. We have to start all over again. And I was like, Lord, all I can do is trust you. They're feeding me something they shouldn't be feeding. I would throw up. Yeah. And the first muscles that started to come back, because I had been exercising my diaphragm, I started getting muscles back. I could shake my hips. Okay. And shaking my hips, somehow I started being able to turn my head a little bit. So a couple times on throw up, I was able to just turn my head a little bit, so I wasn't coming down the front. I'd kind of get it to go over the left side. Okay. And I could feel myself making a bowel movement. You can't do anything about it, but I feel all this. Yeah. And most of this was happening on the night shift. Oh, man. It would happen, the clock would read 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the evening. And they wouldn't clean me up until like 6 o'clock in the morning. And you're feeling, I could lay there all night long. I'd wake up and I'd say, Lord, this is not good. They've left me laying here in my excrement and spit up. And
folks, tell a real experience. This stuff happens.
I could see the clock. And I wasn't able to speak. But I'm recovering very rapidly. They started telling me, because I'd shake my hips. And it didn't take me long till I'd shake the entire bed. And one of the nurses came in there and chewed me out for shaking the whole bed. And I'd just give her a dirty look, and I'd shake the bed because something was wrong. I had either spit up over myself or had pooped. And they weren't doing anything about it. I'd get their attention. It was the only way I could speak.
Yeah.
I was using whatever I had to
Yes.
communicate with.
Okay.
But this nurse
So it's,
wasn't connecting.
yeah. So it's tough.
It was tough. Very, very difficult to go through this. Then the doctor come in, and the doctor was the first one to say it. The doctor said, "You are recovering at an exponential rate." And I still couldn't speak. Then, and my throat was dry. My tongue felt like a piece of leather. It was not allowed fluids. They take this little thing that looked like a sucker that had some kind of stuff on it. They stick it in my mouth. And I wanted to suck on it because my mouth was so dry. And they thought they were wetting my mouth. But it didn't matter. My mouth was dry. My throat was dry. I was so uncomfortable. Hurting all the time. Everywhere hurt. And I could feel if there was a fold in the sheets underneath of me, and it hurt as if there was an inch or something, or half an inch or something.
So you were like the princess and the pea.
I could feel yes.
Yeah.
I could feel everything.
Okay.
So she finally comes in. She says, "I'm going to get the speech therapist to come in and give you a speaking tube." She says, "So you can speak to us." She says, "You got to be able to push the button." Well, by now I'm able to move my arms, but I can't really get any strength. Because at first I could wiggle my fingers, and it was difficult to even I couldn't even put my arms up onto my chest while they're telling me to push the button. They set this thing on my chest, I can't even grab it.
Yeah.
The TV's off, and I'm awake now a lot. Yeah. They wouldn't wash my face, so the oils and dirt from my face was going in my eyes. So my eyes were like fireballs constantly because they didn't wash my face. Finally, the guy comes in, and I think it was applesauce or something. He gave me a little something. "Let's see if you can swallow this without choking on it." And they got me off the respirator. They just have this thing that's blowing the humidified air across the trach. Okay. And I was able to swallow it just fine. He goes, "Good." He says, "I'm going to go ahead and give you a speaking tube." Doctor said, "If you can swallow good, we're going to give you a speaking tube." He put the speaking tube in, and he pushed the button on it. It says, "Okay, let's see if you can talk." I said, "What?" I said, "What do you..." I had a whisper. My voice was a whisper.
Yeah, okay.
Because this thing was in there, and all this damage to my vocal cords. So my voice was a whisper. But I was able to speak and not loud enough in the whisper. He heard me. I said, "What do you want me to say?" He goes, "Wow." He said, "You are speaking." This is the speech therapist guy. You're speaking very clearly. I said, "Am I not supposed to be able to?" He goes, "Most people can't." And then he looks at me and he goes, "You just spoke without the button being pushed." I said, "If I don't need the button, I don't need the button." He's going.
So you never did the,
he
"Hi,
says,
my name is Casey Radunz." You never went through that?
No,
Wow.
I pushed the button one time because he told me push the button. I pushed the button and I didn't sound any different pushing the button or not pushing the button.
So you're bouncing back.
So I'm coming back, and every day I was doing things more than I could do the day before. So after they gave me the speaking tube, and they were able to, they were still feeding me through the feeding tube because they were concerned about, okay, we still need a little more time speaking and that to be able to swallow. Everything was being pureed that they did give me. I was given ice and things like that first. A little lemon flavored icy thing that was wonderful tasting. It was great. And I really enjoyed it. It was cool, so it felt good in my throat. And so I was recovering, and the nurses started saying it. They'd start saying, "You're recovering at an exponential rate." Now I'm able to talk. And I chewed them out for not cleaning me up at the night shift. And I said, "I'm in a lot of pain. Wash my face." And I started giving orders, and they started taking care of me because I could tell them what they needed to do. The nurse's eyes got this big when I told her about them. I'd throw up and poop. Didn't get cleaned up till the morning. I said, "I can see the clock." I knew what shift it was, and I knew how long I laid there like that. 3 nights in a row, and I said, "You won't do this again." And they didn't. Yeah. And I told her, I said, "I'm in pain constantly." She said, "We're doing everything we're supposed to do." I said, "Yeah, no, you're coming in here every 2 hours. You're moving me around and all this stuff." I know, but when you pull me up in the bed, I said, 10 minutes later, my feet are against the footboard again, and then that hurts. It hurts, it hurts. I said, "Take that stupid footboard." She said, "Can't do that, can't do that." I said, "Well, this bed's too small. Put me in a bigger bed." She said, "We have one size bed in this hospital." Okay. She told me. "That's it." Okay. Oh, no. The bed is too small for me.
Okay.
And you're telling me you cannot put me in a better bed.
I got to get
She
out
said,
of this place.
I'm going to go call the doctor.
Yeah.
She comes back and she says, I spoke to the doctor, and the doctor's going to fight for you with the administration. We're going to get you a bigger bed. They call it a bariatric, but short, Barry bed for short.
Okay.
So after 45 minutes, the doctor, they told me, they said, she fought for you for 45 minutes for the administration of the hospital, ordered you a rented bed. They had to bring it out of Houston. A little over 24 hours later, it was delivered. They got me in the thing, and oh man, that was so wonderful.
So good.
The pain started subsiding. Up until this time, I was sleeping 30 minutes to 2 hours at a time. And I told them, I said, I'm in so much pain, I'm sleeping 30 minutes to 2 hours at a time because this bed's too small. Yeah. And that's why the doctor said, we have to have a bigger bed for this big man. Have to. She fought for it. They put me in that bed. I fell asleep for 4 hours. The nurse came back in there and she found me awake, and I said, I slept. She goes, yes, you did. I said, it felt great. And so I started sleeping up to 4 hours at a time. And they kept telling me, you are recovering at an exponential rate. So they took me from that room, stuck me in this other room. They said, we are going to downgrade you because now you're able to eat. Okay. Still have the speaking tube, still have the trach, the feeding tube, but now you're able to eat. We can spoon feed you. Can't feed myself. They took me down to another room on the lower floor, and they stuck me in this room right beside the nurse's station because I can't push the button. It was Kathy that told them he had Guillian-Barre, because the nurse said to her, he doesn't ever push the button. He doesn't ever. She goes, he can't push the button. He had Guillian-Barre. He cannot push a button. And the nurses, she told me, she says that when it dawned on them, they'd been expecting me to push a button. You could tell in their faces when it dawned on them, like, oh my God, we've been waiting for him to push a button, and he can't. Yeah, so they finally realized.
So focused on caring for people.
There's so many people are dying.
Yeah.
People are dying from the COVID.
Yeah. Okay.
They get me in this other room. I'm right beside the nurse's station. The nurses would walk by, and I'd have to get their attention again by shaking the bed, shake my head, and speak as loud as I could because my voice was a whisper. But they would look at me every time they'd come and go. So all I had to do is make a gesture and they'd come in, which was great. I was recovering at an exponential rate, they kept saying. I started, they were feeding me, and I learned how to hold on to a plastic spoon. And they were pureeing my food and sticking it on a plate. And so I finally learned, they were giving me pudding. So they bring me pudding, and I'd take the pudding cup. I told them, bring me a cup of pudding and a plastic spoon. Take the lid off of it for me. I'm going to see if I can. She says, John, won't you make a mess? I said, I'm not going to make a mess. You watch. So she gave it to me and she left. She come back in a while later, and I had been holding the cup sideways just enough that the pudding wasn't pouring out, and I was able to stick the spoon in and feed myself. And I said, I can feed myself. That was a big step, big milestone. I had to be a plastic spoon because I couldn't hold the metal one. The metal one was too heavy. Okay. So they downgraded me again to a regular room just before you get checked out. Now, I'd been there for several weeks and feeding myself, doing physical therapy, got strong enough now I finally went from you don't have to puree, and I had all my food pureed. They put in a blender, puree, stick in the cup. I'd eat from the cup with a spoon, plastic spoon. I got to where I was able to use the regular metal utensils. I said, now you don't have to puree. I can now cut. They come in the room, and every day I was doing something I couldn't do the day before. One day, Christian came in there. He had been my nurse before, and they had put him on. It was only for 1 or 2 days that he'd been my nurse again. He'd come around to my bed, and when they walk in your room, they'd say to you, "What's your name and date of birth?" And you were supposed to answer. And I told him one day he walked in there, I thought, I'm going to get him. I said, I just look like the guy you think I am, but I'm not the same guy. And he comes around my bed and he looks at me and he goes, now you're playing tricks. He says, you must be feeling good. So he's standing there with his hands on the rail of the bed. I reached over with my right hand and I grabbed his left arm so fast that when he jumped, I had a hold of him. Okay. And he jumped. And I had a hold of him. He goes, you moved. And I said, I moved fast enough. You couldn't get away. He goes, wow, he says, you are
bouncing back.
I was coming back at a rate that was astonishing. Now.
So when you checked out 65 days
they were
later,
telling me when
you demand to get out? Or
no, they were trying to kick me out when I wasn't ready.
Okay.
They were trying to send me to Tennessee when I still couldn't even walk on a walker or get up on my own.
Okay.
They were trying to pawn me off on my sister to be in her house with nobody tending to me, and I was in no condition to be there in this condition. So I'm recovering at this exponential rate. They're doing physical therapy, and I'm doing everything that I can every time they let me. They were giving me these therapy bands. I'm playing with these therapy bands in the bed. I'm doing everything they would allow me to do. And the physical therapists come in, I'd get as much in as I could because I was feeling great. I knew I was getting better. They were saying, you're going to go 6 months to a year in a rehab center before you can walk. I said, no. I said, I will not. I said, I walked into this hospital. I was weak, but I will walk out of this hospital on my own 2 feet. And I said, I may be on a walker, but I'm walking out of this hospital. They'd tell me, and this day after day after day, this would go on. And I tell them, I serve a living God. I'm walking out of this hospital. They say, you don't understand. You had Guillian-Barre. I don't care what you call it. I'm walking out of this hospital. So after all this time, the physical therapist, he's only a hospital physical therapist. I'm supposed to get real therapy later. And he's only able to do just so much, him and his staff. And they kept telling me this. And I said, well, okay, but I serve a living God. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to walk. Okay. And they'd shake their heads and they'd tell me no. Not to you this, that, and the other. And I'd say, I serve a living God. So he brought this upright walker in there one day. I said, I want a walker. He said, well, we have one. I think it's too small for you. I'll bring it in anyway. He brought it in. I tried to get up on the thing, and I'm all hunched over with my arms on the thing. And I said, you need to raise this thing up. He goes, it's up as high as it'll go already. He's telling me, stand up. I said, I can't. Yeah. And I had to put pressure on my arms, the arm rest things. Yeah. And I said, I can't stand up the rest of the way. I'm bent over. My knees are not quite locked in. It's too short. So he helped me with my phone. We bought one off Amazon, had it delivered. A friend of mine picked it up at my house, finished the assembly, brought it to me on a Saturday. Saturday, the physical therapist let me walk in it, in the room. Okay. First time I got up, all the way on my own in an upright walker. He said, let's see if you can take a step. I took a step. He goes, how's that feel? I said, feels great. He goes, you think you can walk a little? I said, I think I can walk with this thing. He goes, well, let's see. He went over and closed the door of the room. He said, I'm not letting you leave the room. He said, can you make it to the door and back? I said, I can make it to the door and back. I walked over to the door with it, and he's right beside me. We make a turn, come around the room. Now, this is a 2-bed room because of COVID. All the rooms are single. Yeah, right. They've taken the other bed out, so everybody has a private room because of COVID.
Room to move around.
So we had room to maneuver around. Okay. So I maneuver around in this room, come back around. I pulled up beside the bed under his instructions, pull up, back up, sit down. He said, that's it for today. I'm like, what do you mean that's it? Oh, we can't have you overdoing it. I'm like, man, I feel like I can go. The next day we were able to go out in the hall. And so every day I'm going out in the hallways and walking, and they're still saying, you are recovering at an exponential rate. I tell them, I serve a living God. I'm walking out of this hospital. They stopped arguing with me about walking out of the hospital because I'm walking around on this upright walker, and I'm not supposed to be. Yeah. Okay. You're recovering way too quick. This is not, from 100% paralyzed, he's walking up and down the hallways of the hospital on an upright walker. Yeah. And everybody's flabbergasted.
Good. So how much did you weigh at this time when you got out?
When I got to my sister's house, I weighed myself there. And the scale at her house said I weighed 218 pounds. Okay. And I'm walking. So I don't know how far down I had gone, but I know I was 270 to 275 when Guillian-Barre hit me. And it was muscle because I didn't have much fat after all that bike riding, after all that working I've been doing to build up my strength.
So how did you get to your sisters from Granbury?
They discharged me from my room.
Your room?
They didn't even make me take a wheelchair from the room to the door. They discharged me in the room and they said, you can walk out of the hospital on your own. You've already signed the papers. You're discharged.
So you walked.
I walked down through the hallways of the hospital.
On your walker?
On the walker.
On the walker, okay.
And we went out through the emergency room door, which was further than the front door. Walked past the front door, down the hallways, out through the emergency room door, where the guy was waiting with the car. I greeted the nurse that had admitted me to the hospital there. The same nurse was there that went from when I went there being burned.
Okay. That nurse was there.
That nurse was there.
And
I have pictures with her standing there with the walker behind me, and I'm standing there with my arm around her, not using.
Who's the driver?
He's just like a Uber type.
The same driver?
No, different guy. He's local from Guillian-Barre.
Okay.
He takes me to the airport.
Takes you to
DFW. Lets me off at the wrong gate.
How'd you
supposed to be getting on American Airlines, the wrong gate. I am at the Arab Emirates counter.
You're in the wrong terminal.
I'm in the right terminal, just the wrong gate.
Oh my goodness.
I'm supposed to check in with American Airlines, and it's several hundred yards the other direction.
So they load you up in a chair and someone pushed you?
Nobody there wanted to help me at all, and I'm fresh out of a hospital bed, standing in an upright walker. I've got my bags, because the guy told me, I'm not even supposed to help you get into the building, but I'm going to do it. He helps me get in the building, and then there I am.
In the wrong
terminal. So my bags are with me. I can't grab my bags and hold the walker at the same time, because I had been packed up to go.
Demands are being made on you that you didn't.
My voice is a whisper. Still.
Yes. Okay.
I had a whisper of a voice no matter how loud I attempted to speak. Had my phone, and I had no dexterity with my hands, so it was very difficult to place a phone call. It was still, I'd go to try to hit the button and my finger would go to the wrong spot, and I'd have to bring it all over again. And sometimes it'd take me 15 minutes to place a phone call because my finger wouldn't go where I was trying to put it.
Got your suitcase, you're on a walker.
I managed to call them back here in Guillian-Barre, the nurse, and told her, I said, I'm at the wrong terminal. I haven't got any help. Someone was supposed to meet me with a wheelchair to get me through all this. Nobody's here. I'm at the Arab Emirates counter. I'm supposed to be going to American Airlines. She goes, hang on. She goes, she called me back. I'm going to see what I can do. She talked to people in the hospital, and they said, there's nothing we can do about that error. You have to dial 911 and get the airport, and I'll help you. I said, 911. She goes, that is our only option. I felt real foolish, but I dialed 911. I have a whispering voice.
Yeah.
I'm trying to hold the phone and trying to talk to the phone, and I had finally gotten Arab Emirates to bring me a wheelchair. Yeah. The guy said, the only reason I'm bringing it to you because it's an American Airlines wheelchair. You said you're going on American Airlines. I'm going to let you sit in their wheelchair. Finally brings it to me, and I was thinking, before he got it to me, I thought, how much longer can I stand here before I fall in the floor? Yeah. And I thought, if I fall in the floor, somebody has to do something. Yeah. But I don't want to fall in the floor.
Yeah. You don't want to be taken to an ER.
Which, that would be a bad thing. Back into a hospital because I fell.
Yeah. So
get a hold of the 911 operator. The phone did connect to the right 911. I was talking to airport police. I told her my situation. She first thought it was a prank because of my voice being a whisper. She couldn't hear me very well. There was nothing I could do about that. I finally convinced her this is real. I am a man fresh out of a hospital bed, and I'm at the wrong terminal. American Airlines is supposed to be taking care of me, and I have no help. I'm at the Arab Emirates. She told me, I'm going to send you a officer. I said, that's what I need. Thank you. She hangs up the phone. I'm looking for an officer. At least I'm in the wheelchair now, and I've got my walker in front of me and my bags beside me on my right.
What time is your flight?
I'm looking at the clock, realizing I'm already missing my flight.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
I'm supposed to go out on a 5 o'clock flight. Okay. We left the hospital at 1 o'clock, and it's like 3:30 going on 4 by now.
Oh, my goodness.
And I haven't even gone through the checkout and security yet. And I'm concerned about this. Finally, these two girls show up. They're both little Arab girls.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize what's going on. All of a sudden, one of them grabs my bags, and she's taking off of my bags, and all I have is this whispering voice, and I'm saying, what are you doing? You're stealing my bags. Those are my bags. You're stealing my bags. They didn't introduce themselves or anything to me. She just took off with my bags.
Okay.
She figured out I was freaking out in a whispering voice. She stopped. And I'm like, don't steal my bags. Don't steal my bags. Yeah. The girl, no, I didn't even realize there was another one. Girl behind me was about to start pushing me without even introducing themselves. They just come and like they were picking me up like I was a piece of property. Yeah. And the girl behind me goes, we're with American Airlines. We've been sent to get you and take you to the property. I said, the least you two could have done was introduce yourselves and then help me. You just come and start grabbing my stuff.
So they get you on the flight you were booked to fly on?
No.
No, okay.
Turns out, praise God, there was another flight at 7 o'clock. Okay. My sister was supposed to be there to pick me up on the first flight. She had trouble with my mother, who at the time had Alzheimer's. She's since passed away. But mom was at her house, and her husband has COPD real bad. She was having trouble dealing with my mother and all this. And so the 2 hours later, me arriving at the airport gave her the time to deal with what she needed to deal with so she could be at the airport on time. So it turned out to be, yes. Now here's the amazing thing. Here's the amazing. I had been on a catheter for 50-something days before they finally took me off a catheter. I had gone to the bathroom just before I left the hospital. I am now being put on an airplane and I hadn't gone to the bathroom yet. The only people I have attending me is these two females. Yes. And I'm thinking, I really should try to go to the bathroom, but I can't get women to take me. What am I going to do? Yeah. So they parked me at the gate. Nobody around to help me. If I tried to speak to the people, they're too far away. They don't know I'm trying to get their attention. I have a whispering voice. I made them leave me my upright walker, and I have it folded and sitting across the arms of the wheelchair in front of me, and my arms on top of it. They wanted to take it away from me to start with. Security they wouldn't let me go through security with it. That was a whole fiasco. They finally got me through security. They had to do their frisk thing while I was in a wheelchair because I couldn't stand up in their scanner. Yeah. Guarantee you I couldn't have stood. I told them I cannot stand without the walker. So I have to have something, otherwise 2 of you are going to have to stand beside me for me to put pressure on you for me to stand. They said, we can't. Here I am. I'm fresh out of a hospital bed. A couple of hours ago, I was laying in a hospital bed. Yeah. I went from close to 1 o'clock until after 9 o'clock without going to the bathroom. I finally was able to get to a bathroom and I peed at the airport in Nashville.
In Tennessee. Potty in Granbury, potty in Tennessee. Woo!
I was like, this is a miracle that I've held it this long.
Yes, man.
To get on the airplane, they had to use a special wheelchair thing they call an aisle chair. And how were they going to get me up from my chair to get me into the bathroom in the airplane? The male flight attendant, that's not what they call them today, but that's the only word I can think of. They have a different... Steward. Yeah, flight attendant, whatever. He said, I'll get you there. And I'm thinking, mister, you don't know how... I didn't realize I was only 218 pounds at the time either. I thought, you're not strong enough to hold me up. So I just kept saying, Lord, I don't want to pee my pants. Get me through this. The hospital messed up. Didn't check the box on American Airlines that I had to be assisted with a wheelchair. So nothing was set up.
Slackers are everywhere.
Nothing was set up. Anyway. I was supposed to be the first one onto the airplane, which they did, but I was supposed to be the first one off. Yeah. And the aisle chair was in a different part of the airport. And I had to sit there and wait till everybody's gone. The flight attendant's just standing there with me saying, we're waiting for the aisle chair to get here. Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Anyway, so
I felt the urge to need to go to the bathroom, but it wasn't too bad. And I just kept saying, I'm going to get through. They got me a male attendant after they got me in the wheelchair. And I told the guy, get me straight to a bathroom. He got me a bathroom. We got my bags, got home to my sister's house. At my sister's house, she has already, because she's her husband, my mother, she already has the bedside toilet thing. Great, she had it all set up. I was fine. I could get up and down in my upright walker on my own. I'd get around the house on my own. I was able to get back to the bathroom. I'd push my walker to the side. I'd put my hands on the wall and I could make it to the toilet because the walker didn't fit to the toilet. I was able to get up and down off of the toilet on my own. She only had to take care of the little thing in the bathroom. I mean, the little bucket thing from the potty in the bedroom.
The chamber pot. So you
She only had to take care of it like twice. I was able to do it on my own.
So you bounced
2 weeks
back.
later,
Yeah.
after I'm at my sister's house,
Yeah.
I felt real good this one evening. And I had been to the bathroom with my walker. And so I pushed the walker to the one side in there so I could get to the stool, right? I turned around, and as I'm coming back by the walker, I said, Lord, I feel good. You've been working in my body. By faith, I'm going to take a little walk without the walker, and then I'll come back for it.
Okay.
So I come out of the bathroom down this short little hallway to the kitchen, and I called to my sister. She's in there cooking. She's ignoring me, and I'm saying, Pat, look. She goes, I'm busy. I said, you need to look. I'm standing there without the walker, not touching anything, just standing there. Wow. She finally looks over, and I said, look, no walker. I walked from the bathroom to here without it. I'm going to go back and get the walker. I said, so for safety reasons. I said, but I'm still recovering. I said, we both praised God. I made it back. My mom got the walker. A couple days later, I got her to get my dad's cane that he had, that I made him when I was in school, and which I knew it was perfect for me. Yeah. I was walking around the house 2 weeks later with just the cane. Now, I've got discharged from the hospital in the middle of November. Thanksgiving that year was like the 27th or something. It was late in the week on the calendar that year in November. Started walking around on the walker, and I told without the walker, I pushed it aside. Used the cane around the house. It hadn't been outside yet. I told my sister, I said, well, at one point I told her, I said, I feel like I've come as far as I can go while I'm here. I've plateaued, but we're only 2 weeks from Christmas now. I said, I'll stay through Christmas so you can get me home over your Christmas holiday. She's okay. I stayed through Christmas. Christmas was over. I've been driving her car, running errands to her from the store and coming back and all this stuff. I wasn't supposed to be able to drive. I'd never drive again. I'm driving her car. Yeah. A month after out of the hospital, I'm driving my sister's car to the store, picking up stuff, coming back, carrying things in the house.
Bouncing back.
Using a cane when I'm outside. I got to where I was walking around the house without the cane. I just use it to go outside and take my dog for a walk, so I'd be steady not to fall outside. Yeah. I'm taking my little dog for a walk on the leash. Christmas comes.
Remember, his sister had made a hot shot to Granbury to get hot shot, take him back
right
home, so hot shot was waiting on
him. He
him.
was there.
Yeah.
My sisters were taking care of him. He was there when I got there. So now Christmas is over. Christmas was Saturday. So Sunday, the two of them, my sister and brother-in-law, had been talking while I was in bed. They decided, because I kept saying, I'll drive us home so you'll be fresh to drive yourself back. And so they said to me, they said, you sure you could drive yourself all that? I said, sure. I said, if I had to, we could do a hotel, but I don't think so. They said, well, what we're going to do is we got all this tools and various things. She said, we have that antique, remember the antique table we had in the kitchen? I said, yeah. She said, well, we're giving that antique round table to you. And all of Dad and Grandpa's and great-grandpa's tools that are here at the house, we're putting this stuff in a U-Haul, send you home. In a little U-Haul, little 3/4 ton U-Haul.
Okay.
I said, sure. So Tuesday, we get the U-Haul. The two of us together loaded up. We blew stuff in about that deep in the floor, front to rear inside this little U-Haul.
So you drive yourself home.
Wednesday morning, I get in the U-Haul and I head home, 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock that night. I'm in my bed in Granbury, Texas. It's 700 miles from her house to mine. I drove it like a truck driver. Wow. I went to the bathroom, fueled the truck, took the dog for a walk, and when it was time to eat, I ate, and I was gone, like a truck driver.
Yeah. Here we are going on almost 4 years later. You're working. You recovered economically, which is a whole nother testimony. If you want to actually talk to him to get more information, send an email to me, Alan, ALAN, at generationspeople.org. ALAN at generationspeople.org. So, how long you been driving trucks again?
Well, I was released to go to work the first week of March. By March 15th, we had renewed my contract with the trucking company. I've been off for too long, so it's 11 months later. I picked up my first load March the 15th of 2022. We had to finish physical therapy again. Got through that. That's what delayed it till March. I had to do physical therapy on my shoulder again. That's why I was saying the injury to my shoulder was important to the testimony, because that stretched things out at the end.
Wow.
Got my release from the doctor, renewed my contract, went back to work March the 15th, and I went to work pulling the rented trailer. I was paying $250 a week to rent this trailer.
Okay.
Because I didn't own my own trailer, I only owned my tractor. Okay. March the 15th until September, and my finances were bad. Off work for 11 months.
So your tractor is the Kenworth you were working on?
Yes.
So that got
and I
fixed.
still have that tractor.
That got fixed.
Yes.
It's still on the road.
It's still on the road. I'm still driving. I'm still taking care of my old truck. I'm an old school truck driver with an old school truck.
So be careful with cutting torches underneath Kenworth trucks. Go ahead.
So the short financial miracle is I'm renting this trailer, $250 a week. Yes. By September, I bought the trailer from the man for $14,500, and I paid him cash. And I still had money in the bank after I paid cash for the trailer. And
that's after not working for 11 plus months.
And I went back to work, and God blessed me, and I paid for my trailer. Cash.
That's good.
Still have my trailer today.
That's good. Well, let's close in prayer. And I want to pray for the viewers. Lord, I thank you for what you've done for Casey. Thank you, Lord, for sparing his life. Amen. And bringing him through this with a story of faith that is amazing. Thank you, Lord, for the experiences you've given him through this. Thank you, Lord, for bringing him up to that fateful day in 2021 and then bringing him through that trial. And Lord, the amazing recovery, and still the testimonies are growing. Thank you, Lord, for our viewers. I pray, Lord, you would encourage them. And those that need to reach out to Casey, Lord, may they email me with their contact info so that Casey can reach out to them. Lord, bless them. Amen. Keep them. Cause your face to shine upon them and be gracious to them. Lord, lift up your countenance upon them and give them your peace.
Shalom.
The peace that passes all understanding.
Yes.
The peace that is based on Calvary's conquest and not human compromise.
Yes.
Because it is finished.
It is done. Amen.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you so much.